I am Vanessa and today I'm going to give you a tour of my yarn stash and later on explain to you why I'm going on a yarn ban this year and what rules I'm giving myself. So my current stash is all in this cabinet behind me. There's also like a little chest on top where I keep all of my sock yarn, and the drawers on the bottom are also full. I have a huge bag of yarn filled with my advent yarns and everything I recently got. So what I think I'm going to do is show you everything that's in the cabinet, or most of the things that are in the cabinet, and not whatever's in that bag, because I did show everything in that bag in my latest podcast episode and I think it would just be a bit too much showing every single thing I own. I don't want to bore you. I also got these baskets to put all of like needles and other knickknacks into that are currently just flying around that cabinet and not properly organized. And I collected every single thing I found around the house, like all of my current projects and all of the knicks and knacks that have gotten lost in like sofa creases. And this box will be what goes back down into the living room. So I have to clean out everything that's in here and reorganize it and just keep the stuff in there that's actually needed. So yeah, I have to get that bag of yarn into the cabinet, and I wanted to take the opportunity to reorganize my whole stash because the way it's currently situated, it isn't ideal to accommodate all of the new yarn. So what I'm going to do is first take everything out that's in there. I'm going to show it to you and then put it on the dresser behind me. And part of my yarn ban is to check how much yarn I'm using from my stash over the year, because I do want to have like a little challenge, I would say, or make it just kind of a project. So I am going to write down exactly how many grams of yarn I own and how much I'm using over the year. I will get more into detail about this later on, but just to have like an overview of how this is going to go down. Now, I want to be real with you. This is like my office space where I also work from home a couple of days in a week. That's going to eventually become a proper craft space. But right now it's just a catch-all room for everything that does not yet have a space in the house. We have to rip out all of our flooring because of woodworm, which we didn't expect when we moved in. So we are going room by room, and this room is where everything from the room that's currently under construction ends up. So you can see, like, you can already kind of see the mess over there. But right now you only see like a nice little cabinet. I'm going to show you the rest of the room just to, yeah, be open. So this is what you are seeing right now. And this is what the rest of the room looks like right now. I also have to clean my desk before I start work again. Yeah, right next to the cabinet there's a stack of boxes that haven't been unpacked yet. And there's my cat fighting her way through the jungle. And yes, you saw that correctly. That's a table saw in the middle of my room. Yeah. But even if the rest of the room is a total mess, I still want at least my yarn to be properly organized. I have spent a lot of money on it, so I want it to be organized and put away and not be laying around in just a corner and possibly be wasted. Yeah, so let's get cracking. I have a tea to strengthen me, and maybe you can send me some mental courage to get this done. practical thing about the table saw is that I can put my tea over here. I will start at the top and then work my way down. So I'm not going to show you the sock yarn right now. I'm going to show that probably in a different video. I have something planned regarding all of my sock yarn. So I'm going to keep my sock stash for that video, just to tune it down a bit and not have like a 2-hour video just showing all of my yarn. Okay, let's start with this box. This box is actually filled with all kinds of baby yarn that are left over from projects. I have this Rito design yarn I used for my Geogradient shawl. I have this Lang Merino 200. I have some, what is this, Mayflower cotton merino yarn, and also a bunch of broken in skeins of Drops Baby Merino in all kinds of colors. I will take off the top layer here so I can show you some of it. So these are a lot of like purples and pinks, and just more vibrant and kid-friendly colors. I'm not going to show you every single one of these right now because they are actually like scraps and not full skeins. And this is more utilitarian for me in terms of I use it to make gifts but not necessarily to knit for myself. And this is going to stay in this box. This basket that was over there has some Nordic Sky wool in it that can actually go with the yarn I already showed, and my hand spun skeins. Next up we have this little basket that actually only contains one ball of yarn. I'm excited to use this. This is Noro yarn Yakuta, I don't know. And it's 50% silk, 25% wool and 25% polyamide. So it's a bit more of a summery yarn or maybe spring time, and also the colors really remind me of spring. I actually want to use this pretty soon. There's another box up there, and this one just contains a sweater's quantity of Knitting for Olive merino yarn, that's this one, and Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair, both in the color copper. That's just waiting to be used. I'm keeping it in this box so it all stays together and I don't accidentally use a single ball and then don't have enough anymore to make a sweater out of it. But as I have a lot of new Knitting for Olive yarn, I don't know if that's going to stay like that or if I'm going to dedicate a broader spot for all of that yarn. Now we are getting into my Woolyknit collection. I do not know the name of all of these anymore. When I come around to using them, I'm going to tell you the names. I have this yellowy gold green hank of yarn, this deep sea blue, 2 dark Havard greens, and 2 like muted taupey browns. I think this one's called Nazareth. I'm pretty sure about that. I have a broken in cone of cinnamon brown that has already partially been wound up, and a full hank and some leftover from, I think this is the color Pearl. This basket, I really like this basket. It isn't, I don't think it's a proper yarn to display in it. I've had some yarn in here that looked better, that stayed more upright. This is, however, a very interesting yarn. 4 skeins of this Queensland llama lace, and this is 100% llama. It's this caramel brown color, and this has 383 meters per 100 grams, and it's just, it says pure extra fine baby llama, and that's exactly what it feels like. Now, in my podcasts, I usually put every single yarn in the description down below with like the brand name, the yarn name and color name, mostly also with where I got it. However, I think that would be a bit much in this case, so I'm more likely going to put all of my like usual haunts of knit stores in the description down below, so you can find them as well. Now we are getting into more knitting for Olive. I have a few skeins of mohair. This one is dark blue, forest berry, as well as this one. And this one is mushroom rose. A few balls of knitting for Olive pure silk in the color powder. Space is already getting tight on my dresser over here. I hope I can fit everything. If not, I have to put some on the floor. A couple of balls of cotton merino in the color dark sea green with a little leftover, and this is elephant blue. Some more cotton merino, 3 balls of soft aqua, 1 ball of terracotta rose, and 1 ball of merino in the colorway plum rose. This I used for my Shimo sweater, and I have a whole ball left over. In the corner there I have a book, and it's 52 weeks of socks. Maybe I'll have a look at that this year. I've never actually knit something out of this, so that would be an opportunity. These are 3 hanks of some hand spun yarn. These 2 are dyed with plants, and this one's just the natural color of the yarn. I'm planning to do like some color work project with these. If you do see me work with this, and I'm not mentioning that I washed the white yarn before using it, please remind me to. Because the lady who sold me these told me that as these have been washed a couple of times and this one hasn't, this one has to be washed before it's used together, so it can set properly. So yeah, if I do forget, please remind me. Some more hand-spun yarn. I've had this for a couple of years already. I bought it at like a sheep festival like in the rural part of Luxembourg, and I yet have to find something to make with this. Maybe you have an idea. I would say it's about a DK weight yarn, maybe a bit thicker, and I have 3 hanks of it. Maybe you have an idea. Next up, this is all of my scraps, all of the fingering weight, DK and mohair scraps that aren't baby yarn. This one is just a bag of knitting for Olive in rusty orange colors. Some Gilead, some leftover advent calendar yarn from Fable Knitwear. What else do we have in here? Some leftover yarn from Garden Flower Yarns. Here's another one. And then just some like small scraps. I like to keep them in these little bags so I can remember where they were from and they don't tangle up inside this box. Little tea break. This one is a really fun yarn. I think I'm going to do like maybe a colorwork summery sweater with this. It's a I would say it's a very thin fingering, almost lace yarn. They sell it as sock yarn, but I think it's almost too pretty to make socks out of it. And it's Schoppe Zauberball in the color 2545. And it's 100 grams, so I think I would have to hold it together with something, maybe with like some knitting for olive silk to make it more soft and more summery. I'll have to see. But that's why this isn't in my sock box. On the top. Now this is my mohair corner, or more like a fluff corner. This is some drops alpaca silk in the color 4, I think. Yeah, in the color 4. Now I have 2 full balls and 2 broken in balls of this. A bunch of drops kid silk scraps, like they're all broken in balls. Some more Nordic Sky Ulu mohair yarn, one in this green color, that's the color 16, and one in this white color in the color 20. It's already starting to get a bit dark outside. I hope you can still see fine. I have a bunch of these cedar wood sticks laying around my yarn closet to ward off moths. We have some lavender in the garden and I want to make some lavender bags next year to like avoid getting an infestation. Down here I have a bunch of hand-dyed yarns. This basket is full of skeins of hand-dyed yarn. I'm gonna give you a run through very quickly. This is some Kiezgarn Silky Solace in the color Cocoa, Kiezgarn Merino Solace in the color City Spring, Kiezgarn Silky Solace in the color Stralauer Frühling. I love this color. This makes me think of spring and summer. Another Kiezgarn. This is mohair silk, one of a kind colorway. This is Dornröschen's Keller in the color Irish Fairy Tale. King Fibers mohair silk that I got in New York in the color Salt Marsh. Some Frida Füchse Tam Tam Decay. It's a 65% silk and 35% linen, and it's in the color Pistachio. And this is some Lino Muga linen, and this is the color Light Rose. It's 100% linen. Now, this is actually a work in progress. It's already the front piece of the Baudelaire blouse that I started at the end of the summer, and I just wasn't feeling like finishing it. And it's made out of this BC yarn Bio Shetland in the color 49. It's this buttery orangey yellow, and I'm excited to finish this for next summer. The same yarn in the colors 17 and 55. They're almost the same. We are nearing the end here. This is some garden flower yarn in this colorful rainbow colorway that's blocked with a navy blue, and it's called Happy New Year. That's fitting. And it's just a basic superwash sock yarn with a pink mini skein that was actually for free. She included that just as a gift. Some more garden flower yarns. This is like a pistachio green, and this is a white speckled with purple. Now in this top drawer, I'm going to move you down a bit so you can see a bit better. Ignore the mess. In this top drawer I have all of my needles and cables and stuff like that, and that really has to be organized. That's why I bought these little baskets. In this drawer I have a whole Kiezgarn advent calendar. There's actually only one skein missing. I'm not planning to use this as it is together. I'm more like using it for pops of colors in different projects. I actually picked out these more jewel toned colors to maybe use in a Tolster, no, what was it, in a Daft Days cardigan. I have this 100% cotton yarn that I am planning to use for a Tolster tee. This is Lana Grossa Slow Wool Lino. It is made out of 85% merino and 15% linen. I have 2 skeins of that, and it's a fingering weight yarn. And then that raw only has like a bunch of leftover full balls of yarns that I have left over from projects that I wouldn't call scrap yarn because they're still full balls. And I'm going to take them out. I wanted to leave them in, so because they're probably going back in there anyway, but I need to weigh them. This bag actually contains a bunch of fiber to be spun up. I'm not going to include that in my stash because it's not yarn yet. So this is going to become stash the moment I finish spinning it. But I'm going to go more in depth with that rule later on. Some more scrappy yarn. Oh, and this bag has these huge balls of fluffy yarn. It's 19% wool, 38% cotton, 25% polyester and 18% polyacryl. This is probably going to be turned into a blanket at some point. I have a few balls of that. They are huge. I think they have like 1,000 meters. They're 250 grams and have 800 meters per ball. That was kind of like an oops buy. I wish I wouldn't have bought it, but I now don't know what else to do with it than use it. Like in Luxembourg, it's hard to give away stuff. We don't have many thrift shops, so it's hard to know what to do with yarn like that. I will have to see. I'm going to move you up a little bit again, so I don't have to like scooch down. And the rest in there is also scraps and more yarn I wish I would have never bought. Okay, so now I will have to tally up all of my yarn before I put them back into that closet. I think I'm going to speed up that process. I'm just going to explain how I'm doing it. I have this scale that can measure in milligrams, so it can really measure exactly how much one ball weighs when I can open it. Oh, it still has a protective film that I can pull off. Always nice. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to count every 50 grams as one ball. So I'm going to first measure all of my yarn, write that down, and then divide the full grams through 50. So even if mohair is lighter than fingering, a 25 gram ball of mohair will still only be half a ball. I don't know how else to do this. I would otherwise have to keep track of multiple bases, and I prefer just keeping track of the full count of grams. That means I still have to get down my box of sock yarn so I can count that too. Great. Or no, I'm going to count the sock yarn separately because I have some projects coming up for that and I don't count that to the rest of my stash because I really only use it for socks. And what else? Yeah, so also a skein of fingering weight yarn usually measures 100 grams, so that will count for 2 balls of yarn. That's how I'm going to approach it. I'm not going to weigh balls that I know that haven't been broken into, because that would just be too much. Even if it's like a gram more or less, that doesn't change my final count too much. Okay, so I will talk to you later about my ban rules for 2024. I put all of my things in these 4 baskets. Here I have all of my needles. Like, I use a lot of these bendy DPNs instead of the usual DPNs. I have all of them here with my shorties, and then my needle sets, all of my spare single needles and cables, miscellaneous stuff like my scales and little bags and yeah, stitch markers. And here I have all of my buttons and tags. And now this drawer is a lot more organized than it was before. I'm going to give you a quick tour of how I arranged everything in here, because it's starting to get dark. And then afterwards I'm going to tell you how much yarn I totaled at and the rules for my yarn ban. So starting in the top left corner, you have a ton of commercially dyed skeins of yarn that haven't been wound yet. This is my box of baby yarns, and over here, I think it's quite dark, but over here you have all of my Woolyknit yarn hangs. One step down, we have all of the hand-dyed yarns, the ones I bought from people at markets, as well as the one I made myself. Here we have miscellaneous skeins of like more special yarn. Yeah, this one has also some others in the back. Down here, let's start on this side, is all of my knitting for olive yarn. It's from left to right. It's 6 cotton merino and mohair. This box still has the sweater's quantity of knitting for olive yarn, and in the corner next to it we have all of like different fluffs. Now on the bottom row we have this basket of hand-dyed yarn. Some are single skeins, some I have a sweater's quantity of. Here we have my scrap basket or box with all of my scraps, and here are the garden flower yarns, and I still have a little spot left there, but well, I'm not going to buy any yarn this year. I'm just going to use it up. My drawer with needles and crochet hooks, and this drawer has leftover yarn from projects that isn't scrap yarn, because I have full balls of it, and my advent calendar. And the bottom drawer just has a bunch of bags as well as my needles. Okay, it's now just a couple of days later. It was getting too dark last time to continue filming, so I thought I'd just film the rest of this a couple of days later. So I tallied up all of my yarn and I came to 13,255 grams of yarn, which equals to 265.1 balls of 50-gram yarn. This is actually quite a bit more than I expected. I didn't realize that I had that much yarn. But yeah, I will be working on getting rid of some of that in the following year. And that's where I now come to my stash down or yarn ban rules. So basically, I am not allowed to buy any new yarn in the year of 2024. I am only going to knit from stash. That's the general rule. I am going to allow just 3 exceptions to that rule. The first one is souvenir yarn. So when I'm traveling, which honestly is probably not going to be much this year because of all of the renovations we are doing, I am allowed to buy yarn on those travels because I really enjoy having yarn that is a souvenir from a place that I visited and then knitting with it and remembering the holiday whenever I wear that object. And I can also go and visit local yarn shops. I can buy yarn that I wouldn't be able to get where I live. And it's pretty much the only souvenir I buy for myself when I go on holiday. I rarely buy like knickknacks or anything that I'm putting on a shelf. I only buy this yarn to remember the holiday by, except from memories and pictures. And I don't want to forbid myself that joy because it is a big part of my travels for me, and I don't want to force myself to not experience that. I am putting a rule to this, however. I want to only buy yarn on holidays for specific projects. So I do have to know what I want to use it for, and I can buy yarn for a maximum of 2 projects. The second exception is when I make the yarn myself. I have some spinning projects planned for this year, so naturally when I spin that yarn, it is going to enter my stash at some point, but that's only going to be a minimum quantity of yarn, as I'm pretty slow to spinning with my drop spindle, and it's not something I do very regularly. I only have like a couple of projects that are going to produce like a few 100 grams maximum. My third and final exception is that I can buy yarn for a specific project if and only if I own the pattern, so I don't have to buy a new pattern to make it, and I already own most of the yarn that I need for it. So it's only when I need an addition. For example, I do have some yarn and I only need a contrast color to do a colorwork project, or I do have the base yarn and I only need a mohair to hold it together to get to the right gauge. And this exception I'm only allowing myself to use once I have already knit 5 projects from stash. So first I have to knit 5 projects that are completely in my stash, and then I get to use that exception where I can buy some yarn to complete a project. For the way I'm handling my yarn usage, I did take some inspiration from Retro Claude. She has been doing this for a couple of years already, where she counts the grams of yarn she has used and deducts them from her complete stash. For the projects I am already working on, I did add the total yarn amount I got for that project to my stash count. And once I have finished the project, I'm going to weigh whatever I have left over and deduct the rest of it from my stash. I'm sorry if like my glasses sometimes seem a little blue. I'm getting a weird glare from the window over there. I try to avoid that next time. I don't know if I already went into my motivation for my yarn ban in this video, so I wanted to explain a bit why I'm doing this. I am doing this because over the last few months I have bought a lot of yarn that I couldn't possibly use at the same rate as I was buying, and my cabinet over there is really full right now and I don't want it to get even fuller. I want to use up some of the yarn that I already have. This also comes from a standpoint of having a lot of renovations to do in the house over the following year, which will be quite expensive, so I have to be a bit more frugal and a bit more mindful about my money. So turning this whole yarn ban thing into kind of a project and making it a fun challenge instead of feeling like I'm being punished or I have to be very, very frugal, makes it a lot more enjoyable. I do like working under restrictions. It makes me creative to have some like guidelines and rules. So I'm having a lot more fun with this than if I would just be doing it like to myself and without giving me true boundaries. I am also planning to do bi-monthly update videos. So every 2 months I'm going to make an update video where I can show you how much yarn has left my stash and what projects I'm working on other than my podcast episodes. These are going to be a bit more vlog style. I enjoyed doing that a lot during Vlogmas and I wanted to somehow keep that up for the rest of the year. So this gives me the possibility to make some different kind of videos and also keep track of my challenge as well as update you on how I'm doing. This way you will see me working on the projects I talk about instead of only showing them in my podcast. I am still going to do a monthly podcast episode, but there I talk more in depth about the project itself, and here it's more about the yarn usage and the process of knitting. I hope that's understandable and that I'm explaining myself correctly. If you do have any questions, please feel free to write them in the comments below. Maybe I am just missing something right now because I have talked about this a couple of times and can't quite remember if I told you every single thing I wanted to, or if this even makes sense in the eyes of somebody else. For next week I have a video planned where I am going to talk about some of the projects that I came up with to make with my stash yarn. So if you're interested to see what I want to make with all of that yarn, stay tuned for next week. Thank you very much for watching this video and I wish you a happy time crafting and I will see you next week. Bye!